Welcome to the 2013 Issaquah Candidate Forum, presented by the Issaquah Press and the Issaquah Cable TV Commission. I'm Debbie Berto, publisher of the Issaquah Press and your moderator tonight. Tonight we'll hear from the candidates for Issaquah Mayor, and then we will meet the Issaquah School Board candidates. The forum will begin with 3-minute opening statements from each candidate. Questions will then follow with 1-minute responses. Cable TV Commissioner Max Emmerich is here at the front table, and he will raise a warning when 15 seconds are up and then a stop signal when the 1 minute is up. The first 6 questions will be from reporters of the Issaquah Press. Then we will move to questions from the audience or sent in by readers. If an answer needs further clarification, I may ask a follow-up question. Audience, you've been supplied with note cards, so if you'd like to submit a question that comes up while we're in the midst of this, feel free to pass them over here to Issaquah Press Editor Kathleen Merrill. Questions may not be directed to only one candidate. The last question will come from the candidates themselves. Each will ask their challenger a question, and then they will have 1 minute for closing remarks. The Issaquah City Council has 4 seats up for election this year, but all of them are unopposed. Incumbent Stacy Goodman, Eileen Barber, and Tola Martz will return for another 4 years. New to the council in January will be Mary Lou Polly. We do appreciate their service. But voters do have a choice for Issaquah Mayor. After 16 years leading the city, Ava Freisinger will be stepping down. Current City Council members Joe Forkner and Fred Butler are seeking the full-time paid position of mayor. We'll begin tonight with Fred Butler's opening remarks. The first question will then go to Joe Forkner, and we will alternate the order with each question. I like to keep these forums as friendly as we can, and since Issaquah is a friendly kind of town, we'll use first names. Fred, we'll let you begin with your 3-minute opener.
Thank you, Debbie. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to take part in this candidate forum sponsored by the Issaquah Press and Issaquah's Cable TV Commission. I'm delighted that the forums are televised this evening and also that they will be rebroadcast at various times between now and February the 5th, Election Day. I'd like to share a little bit about myself. I'm a civil engineer by training with a master's degree in engineering management. I'm a retired Corps of Engineer Colonel. I commanded a combat engineer company in Vietnam. I'm married and have 6 grandchildren. When I retired from Seattle City Light as their chief engineer, I decided to devote the rest of my time to public service. I've been elected to the City Council 4 times. I've served in a leadership position on the council, either as council president or deputy council president, for 13 of the 14 years that I have served. My focus on the council has been land use, transportation, mass transit, and regional issues. I place a high priority on regional involvement that benefits Issaquah and the Puget Sound area. I serve on the Sound Transit Board and the King County Regional Transit Committee. I'm also the Secretary-Treasurer of the Cascade Water Alliance. I believe in sustainability. All decision needs to take into account the 3 legs of sustainability: people, planet, and prosperity. I believe in collaboration. I believe we can develop better solutions for the issues we face by working together rather than individually. I'm proud to be one of the few candidates rated outstanding by the Municipal League of King County. I truly appreciate the endorsements from the Washington Conservation Voters, Eastside Business Alliance, Affordable Housing Council, King County Realtors, Cascade Bicycle Club, Cascade, our transit workers, Teamsters, and firefighters. My overarching goal for Issaquah is a community where citizens feel good about where they live, work, play, learn, and prosper. I'm committed to preparing for the future now by improving transportation options while promoting smart growth and preserving our environment. I will promote sustainable services and budgets and work to achieve excellence in all we do. My promise to voters is to listen, work hard, and help if I can. I believe my elected and work experience have prepared me to be your next mayor.
Good evening. I'm Joe Forkner, and I'm running for mayor for the city of Issaquah. Prior to moving to Issaquah, I worked for the city of Harrington, a small city of 500 in eastern Washington. I was one of 2 employees responsible for the maintenance and operation of the city. I was the police officer for the city, a volunteer firefighter and EMT for the county fire district, and a reserve deputy for Lincoln County Sheriff Department. I moved here in 1990 and went to work for the city of Issaquah in the operations and maintenance department. I worked on the water, sewer, storm, and street systems, learning the city's utility infrastructure and how the city departments work together for the citizens. In January 1992, the City Council authorized the televising of City Council meetings. For over 5 years, I televised City Council meetings and then Planning Policy and Development Commission meetings. This allowed me to get a better understanding of what was going on in the city and how the city and city government worked. After a few years with the city's operation and maintenance department, I transferred to the city's engineering department and worked as a CAD drafter and engineering technician. I helped with city mapping, including maps for planning, police, and fire, and assisted with the design and drawing of city utility projects. In 1997, I left the city and went to work for a local engineering and surveying company located by Front Street Market here in downtown Issaquah. For over 15 years, I have served on at least 2 and usually 3 of the city's boards or commissions, except for 8 years that I have served on the city council. I served as the Central Issaquah Plan Task Force Chair and have been involved in many community organizations such as the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce and Downtown Issaquah Association for the last 15 years. My experience as a city employee, a city board and commission volunteer, a city council member, and a community volunteer for over 20 years has given me the opportunity to see all the sides of the city, how it works, and how some things could be improved. I would like the opportunity to use the information I've gained over the last 23 years to take Issaquah into the future. I want to find the balance between maintaining our community character and move us into becoming a more urban city. I want to protect the small town feel of the downtown area and still allow the business growth that Issaquah has planned for the future. I want to continue and expand the coordination of the city's Economic Vitality Commission and the Chamber of Commerce to draw the types of businesses that support Issaquah and to increase tourism and economic vitality in the city. I want to ensure citizens are receiving the best customer service possible and make sure that the city government is responsive and transparent. My thanks to the city and the citizens for allowing me to serve you through the years, and I look forward to continue this service as your mayor.
Thank you, Fred and Joe. Joe, you're going to get the first question. The Central Issaquah Plan was approved earlier this year, allowing for higher density and mixed-use development in the business district. What do you most like about the plan, and what is one thing you might change?
The thing I like most about the plan is the ability for us to market Issaquah, downtown Issaquah, as a place where you actually can live and work and play. The urban density and the mixed-use buildings will give us the ability for people to live and possibly dine and shop and things in the same buildings they live in. One of the things that I think needs to be changed is I'd like to see us come up with a transportation system that will allow people that work here and live here to be able to get around the city without having to use their car. I think some sort of a local public transportation system would be ideal to help us deal with some of the workforce housing issues here, where we have so many people who work here but don't live here. And I'd like to see us come up with a way that would work better for us.
Fred?
I like this. What I like best about the Central Issaquah Plan is that it concentrates growth where it makes sense, and it keeps growth where it doesn't make sense by protecting our forested hillsides. We're going up rather than out. And I also like the fact that, as envisioned, the green necklace that will surround the central Issaquah plan will be an amenity that all of our citizens will enjoy. What I don't like about it, I think we could have established better targets for affordable housing. And that's one of the things that I believe we need to concentrate on as we look to revising it in the future.
Thank you. Our second question, we begin with Fred. Last year, the city hired a lobbyist to carry its voice to Olympia and to help secure capital funds. Was the lobbyist worth the investment, and should the position be retained again this year? And if so, what will the goals be?
Yes, we hired a lobbyist, and it was extremely effective. Having a voice in Olympia on a day-to-day basis benefited all of our citizens. There is a project at Lake Sammamish State Park that we probably would not have gotten without him, and $5 million for the North Local Improvement District addressing transportation needs would not have happened without him. The City Council will consider Monday night our legislative agenda for next year, and that legislative agenda will guide the lobbyist as we move into the next legislative session. So that was a relatively small investment that has paid huge dividends for each and every one of our citizens in Issaquah.
I would agree with Fred. I think there was for the small investment that we made in the lobbyist, I think we gained an awful lot of benefit. I think it also gave us the ability to be kept up to date a lot better on what was going on in the legislature throughout the legislative session. We got constant updates on how things were moving and whether things were going our way or not going our way. If we needed to contact legislators, he was there to tell us that maybe a phone call or an email to a legislator about something specific would help the city's cause. It allowed us the ability to do that. And again, as Fred said, the legislative agenda for next year is going to be before the council at our next meeting, and we'll go through it at that time and determine what is going to be the things to look at for next year.
Thank you. Joe, Issaquah's intercity bus, Route 200, is often called inadequate to serve Issaquah's current and its future needs, and really does little to reduce traffic. What can be done to make it better?
I think one of the things that we need to look at with the 200 bus, especially if we can keep it here, is to see that it's in the correct route. Right now, the route was laid out many years ago to help serve different areas than what we really need to serve now. I think the thing that would really increase ridership on the 200 bus is to be able to tie it to both of the transit centers and the park and ride. Getting it up on the hill to the Issaquah Highlands area and getting it to the Talus area where we have more concentration of citizens, I think would give the opportunity to increase the ridership. Unfortunately, transit is kind of like a chicken and egg. You either have to wait till you have enough people to support it, or you have to put it out there and get people used to using it so that it will benefit more. And that's still the thing that we have to overcome.
The Route 200 is used by a lot of young high school students and seniors and low-wage employees that need to get from the transit centers to where they work. But if you look at the Route 200, or freebie as it is called, as it travels around the city, you don't see a lot of riders on it. I believe that we need a smaller bus, which would be lower cost to operate, and as Joe said, move it into our urban villages, the Issaquah Highlands, bringing people down to the transit center there and to and from Talus. there are a lot of workers that work in Tallis at Timber Ridge, and they don't have a convenient way to get there. So I would downsize it and expand that route.
Thank you. Fred, what is the top benefit to the current residents of Issaquah if Klahanie chooses annexing to the city?
Issaquah is a city built on annexations. The city started out very, very small and has expanded through annexations north, east, and west. I think the major benefit to the city is twofold. Number one, we will be able to capitalize on an expanded tax base which will help our cities and make our budgets more sustainable. And number two, it will help us tap into the talent and human capital that exists in Klahanie. They're already engaged in many of our boards and commissions, and that resource will just be strengthened through annexation.
I think the biggest benefit that Issaquah will get from Klahanie is just being able to compete a little bit better regionally because of the higher population that Issaquah has. As Fred said, obviously there is going to be an increased tax base that will also help. But I think one of the biggest things about it, and especially one of the things that the City Council was reminded about, was the being able to compete higher regionally for different funding that's only available for higher population cities.
Okay. Joe, the city administration was recently caught cyber squatting, redirecting web traffic from the Water District's website to its own. If you were currently the mayor, how would you address the personnel issue with those involved in this fraudulent practice?
Well, I would like to think that if I were the mayor, that fraudulent practice would not have happened to begin with, just because the type of office I want to run is not one that would do that sort of thing. Obviously, it did happen, and it seems to me that whoever was responsible is not really accomplishing any more than just keeping the feud that's going on. Not being aware of all of the circumstances around it, I don't know at this point that I would say I would fire the person. There may have been other circumstances and other people that were responsible for it, but I think it would have to be well known that that would not be something that we want to have the city have a reputation for.
Under my administration, I want an administration that is ethical and honest, and cultivate the kind of workforce that realizes that, so that it wouldn't happen. That was an embarrassing situation for the city, and while you can sort of perhaps understand what drove the city to react that way, because of the frustration around other things that were going on that caused that. I think training and ethics and discussions about those kinds of things are important, so that the workforce and the administration is aware that those are things that will not be tolerated.
Thank you. Okay, Fred, a little lighter subject, but
Good.
Just as important. Historic downtown Issaquah redevelopment is sometimes hindered by the need for more parking. What can the city do to help?
You hear about the lack of parking every few years, and the city's actually done 2 fairly comprehensive studies to catalog and document whether there is a parking problem or not. There are times when you may not be able to park within a block or 2 of where you want to go. That is a hindrance, and that does hurt the handicapped. So I think one thing that can be done is to make sure and to review the fact that there's adequate handicap parking to those high traffic areas like village theaters on matinees and during the week. The city doesn't have the financial resources to build a parking garage, and it's doubtful whether an LID would be able to provide the financing for that either.
The city's parking study that was done, I believe it was last year, before the city council said there was not a parking problem downtown. That's one of the things that over the last 5 or 6 years I've been really trying to lobby for. So I went out after the parking study and started looking, and there is parking out there. Unfortunately, the majority of it behind Front Street is marked no parking, we'll tow you if you do. Between Economic Vitality or Economic Development Department and the Downtown Issaquah Association, the Downtown Issaquah Association is trying to get together with the downtown businesses and see if they can get a way to at least share some of that parking after hours or during the day, at least some of the parking spaces, so that we can increase some of the parking down here. I really believe that it is an impact. And I agree with Fred. I don't think there's money out there right now for a parking structure.
Okay, thank you. Joe, we're going to let you start with the first question as we move to those, some of those that were submitted from readers. What solutions do you have for improving traffic flow?
Well, the one thing that I would like to improve traffic flow with is back about 8 years ago, we passed a levy for the Intelligent Transportation System. The Intelligent Transportation System I thought was going to be more of an automated system, and turns out it's just a programmed system. The next generation of that actually monitors traffic as it goes through the city and will adjust the lights electronically on a real-time basis. It's not a real cheap system, but it is a lot more efficient than just running a program that times the lights throughout the day. And I think that's one of the first things I think that I would like to try to see if we can work. A lot of times you'll sit at a left turn and see no traffic coming, and then about the time the light turns green, here comes the traffic. And if that traffic were monitored better and electronically controlled, I think you'd see some real efficiencies.
I agree with Joe about updating our intelligent traffic system. But we need to get the maximum efficiency that we can out of our existing system, and that's our roads, our streets, that is our non-motorized bike lanes, that is our walking paths, and all of those are a means of getting people around town. I believe that adaptive transportation management, which is what you see on I-90, and some of the things that have been implemented there might help us a little bit in Issaquah. We've got the reader boards up on Front Street South and East Lake Sammamish Highway, and that might be one way to alert folks to other routes to get through and in and around our city.
Thank you. Next question might be a quick answer. Will the horrible-looking wall behind Fred Meyer ever be fixed to look presentable? It's an embarrassment to our city.
Yes. But when is another question. We looked at that in a lot of detail several years ago and looked at a number of schemes. It's quite expensive. That wall is a remnant of King County when that part of the city was in unincorporated King County. It is an embarrassment. It looks terrible. It's just a question of money and resources to fix it, to make it look pretty.
And I agree completely. It is horrible to look at, and it is going to be extremely expensive to fix. Unfortunately, it's treated wood, so you can't even really go out and paint it and make the paint stick on it very well. It is something that the city has been aware of over the years, and it is something we monitor to make sure that it's still safe and still doing the job, but it does need to be replaced, and we're trying to work it into the budget cycle so that we can get to it one of these years.
Okay, good news, someday. Okay, Joe, Issaquah is known for having a really strong leadership role in the region. How might that change if you were elected mayor?
I don't see it changing at all. We have a lot of city council members that are on regional boards and representing us very well regionally. I intend as mayor to attend as much regional meetings as I can and interface as much as I can with the regional city and their leadership. Unfortunately now, with a full-time job, it's awful hard to get out to a lot of those meetings, but when I become the mayor, it'll be an easier task to go out and know who the people are in the adjacent cities and in the region and be able to get to know them better and introduce them to the things that Issaquah can provide and the things that we can do for the region.
I have actually enjoyed the regional representation that I've had the honor of being involved in because I'm on the Issaquah City Council. One thing that I have not done that as mayor I would be more active in is to try to take more of an active role in Sound Cities Association and the Puget Sound Regional Council. I'm term limiting off of the King County Regional Transit Committee, and tomorrow Suburban is the deadline for Sound Cities Association for a request for regional positions, and I intend to apply for 2 positions that could lead to leadership positions.
Okay. Fred, other than the $1 million the city has set aside for a human services campus, what can the city do in helping get that started?
That's a good question. There is a task force or group that is working to identify a location. They've been working at that for a long time. There are ongoing discussions right now concerning a parcel of property that the city leases to a nonprofit organization in the city that could lead to an appropriate location for a human services campus. And so since that's a city-owned piece of property, at the right time we could become involved in the negotiations to try to facilitate that process if it looks like there is a basic agreement between the task force and the nonprofit.
And I would agree this, excuse me, the piece of property that the city owns is something that the city could probably help work through some of the problems that might arise between the agencies that are trying to put this together, maybe help with some of the permitting fees, and also because of it being city property, maybe help with some of the improvements that might be needed to be done. I think the city has always been supportive and have tried to help, and I think that now that there's a plan that is moving through the city, I think it will increase its support even more to make this happen.
Okay. Joe, the city and state parks recently signed an agreement to work together toward improvements to Lake Sammamish State Park. Yet the park's not actually in the city, so what does that mean, the agreement? What exactly does the city hope to get out of it?
That's a good question. I would think that the city at some point would like to be able to say maybe the state park isn't being the best steward for that area, and maybe the city should take it over. That would be something that the city might want to investigate. There have been some proposals put forth to find different uses around the park to help subsidize the operation and maintenance. And I'm thinking that maybe if the city were involved in this, the city might be able to help kind of like we did with the salmon hatchery, to make a partnership where we don't have to have the park turned into a commercial center of some sort just to be able to make the operation and maintenance of it affordable. And I think working with the parks is what's going to give us the ideas that are going to work the best to be able to keep it here and keep it a real treasure for us.
Debbie, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The city and state park signed an agreement to work together with the state park, yet the park is not really in the city limits, so what does that agreement mean? What does the city hope to get out of it?
The park is an integral part of Issaquah, and it's a real gem, whether it's in the city or not. What we hope to get out of it is a partnership improvements in the park to convert that to more of perhaps an urban park and enhance the environmental aspects of that. I personally went to Olympia last session with our lobbyist and current mayor, and we were successful in making a case to get funding for a project there that will probably be completed next year with the new bathhouse and everything. So it is an amenity for our citizens. It's an important part of our community, and it just promotes the quality of life that we've come to expect.
Okay. Fred, Mayor Freisinger presented her version of the 2014 budget this last week. Is there one thing in there that you can point out that you might see that might be different this year?
Is there one thing that I could point out that I might...
You would change.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. There are probably a number of things. We've got a structural imbalance in our budget in that it requires the ending fund balance and our LID guarantee fund to help us balance that. We do have a healthy ending fund balance of 21%. Our financial policies that we'll be talking about Monday night at the council and most likely will approve call for a 15%. So we're going to have to tighten our belt a little bit as we go through that budget. There's nothing right now that I can specifically call out and say that I would eliminate or change, with the exception of a human and a social manager that I'd like to bring on earlier.
I agree with Fred. The one thing that I'm kind of disturbed about is the fact that when the budget is done, we try to do it with all of the expenses balancing out to all the revenues. And unfortunately, this budget does affect the ending fund balance and the LID guarantee fund. And I again agree with Fred. I haven't gone through the budget to the point of knowing just exactly what I would want to take out. We're just starting the deliberations on it, and hopefully as we go through the deliberations, the council will be able to locate some things that will allow us to not go after the ending fund balance right now and get us back to a balanced budget based on revenues and expenditures rather than taking money from previous years.
Okay. Joe, you get this one. Morale of city employees is very low. Some employees say they fear for their jobs. As mayor, what would you do to address employee concerns?
Oh, there's a number of things. Last spring, I went through a high-performance organization training with the city, and the high-performance training is a really good idea, or a really good way for the city employees to become more engaged and feel more used to being able to do what they know is best, so they don't have to go to a supervisor to ask permission. Unfortunately, as the city's trying to implement this, a lot of the supervisors are still trying to be supervisors. The other thing is as we go through this, people are still being promoted and things like that, which are kind of contrary to HPO. So the administration is saying we support HPO. We want to flatten the organization. We want to empower everybody to make the decisions for their jobs. But on the other hand, they still want to put in more supervisors, and which are contrary to that. And I think the employees need to see one message.
One of the things that I would like to do is to meet with small groups of employees, a mixture from different departments without supervisors, and spend some time with each of these small groups to find out what their concerns are, and if morale is low, and what could be done just to get an inside look in a non-threatening atmosphere where they can talk. I've used this technique before when I was working, and I was able to, a clear picture emerges when you meet in small groups with folks from different departments to find out how things are working and what's not working, and then you can make adjustments to make things better.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to wrap up tonight, starting with the questions for each other. And so, Joe, we're going to let you begin with your question for Fred.
Fred,
yes.
You believe the North Issaquah LID is worth the over $35 million to complete to reduce traffic?
Yes.
And why?
Costco's international headquarters is located in the area of where that LID is going to be. They're currently considering expanding and adding another 1.5 million square feet of office space or corporate headquarters space over there, and currently under construction is a 5-story structured parking garage, which they can afford to build, the one we cannot afford to build downtown. So that is a major source of revenue for the city, and there's certain prestige that comes with that. And so I believe that is a wise investment in our economic development strategy.
Thank you.
Your question.
Well, I've got 3, but I think I'll just ask one. So, Joe, you've done a lot for the city of Issaquah. What do you consider to be your most satisfying achievement?
Wow. The most satisfying achievement. You know, I'm going to say that I don't believe it's happened yet, but it's in the process. And I think my most satisfying achievement is going to be this campaign for running for mayor. I've always been real leery of politics because of all sorts of things that make headlines every day. And the one thing that I would like to be able to say when this is all over is that Fred and I ran the kind of campaign that everybody would like to see everybody run. And being able to say I did this experience, regardless of what the outcome is, I think is going to still be one of the most satisfying things I've done with the city.
And if I could just follow up to that a little bit. Joe and I met last December.
This is part of your 1-minute close.
Here you go. Okay. Should I do my 1-minute close now?
Yes, you should.
Okay. I'd like to thank the Issaquah Press and Issaquah's Cable TV Commission again for hosting this candidate forum. The election will choose who will follow Mayor Ava Freisinger, who has served as our mayor with distinction for the past 16 years. I believe I have the experience, leadership ability, relationships, and energy to be that person. I've been encouraged by the response I've received as I have doorbelled throughout our city. I appreciate the support I've received from the individuals and organizations who have endorsed me. These endorsements have included current and former legislators, environmental, business, and labor groups. My promise again is to work hard, listen, and to help if I can to make Issaquah the best place it could be. I would appreciate your vote. And remember, with a name like Butler, I just want to continue to serve our residents.
I would also like to thank the Issaquah Press and the Issaquah Cable Television Commission for putting together this forum to allow us to kind of spread some of our views out so people can understand possibly the differences between us. I think my experience with the city, although it isn't as regionally involved as Fred, I've got an awful lot of experience in a lot of the little things in the city. I've been involved in a lot of things, usually as a volunteer working rather than leading, but I have learned an awful lot about leadership with the different things I've done in the city. I look forward to the election. I hope that the voters will turn out in as many as you can to support the issues that are out there. And if you want to vote for me, I will appreciate it. And I would like to continue what Fred started to say is we talked last year or the first of the year and said it makes no sense to have this anything but a cordial, nice election. And I'd like to thank him now for keeping it that way. It's been a hard enough chore as it is, and having him as an opponent, not having to fight him, has made it a lot easier than it really could have been. Thanks.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you. Great forum. We're going to take about a 5-minute break here while we switch out, get ready for our school board candidates. Let's begin part 2 of the 2013 Candidate Forum presented by the Issaquah Press and the Issaquah Cable TV Commission. This is an opportunity for us to all get better acquainted with Lisa Callan and Allison Merriweather, but I also want to remind you that incumbent Marnie Moraldo is also on this year's ballot, but she has no challenger for her seat. Audience, you do have some cards out there. If you'd like to submit note cards, pass them over to Kathleen here on the edge, and she will get them to me. A reminder, questions must be directed to both candidates. We will begin with 3-minute opening statements from each candidate. Questions will then follow with 1-minute responses. The first 6 questions were formulated by Issaquah Press news staff and also from our Sammamish Review and Newcastle News newspapers that also cover the Issaquah School District. And then we will move to questions submitted by the audience or sent in earlier by our readers. The last question will come from the candidates themselves. Each will ask their challenger a question, and then each have 1-minute closing remarks. Again, we'll keep it friendly. So it'll be all Allison and Lisa, and we're going to start with Allison and her opening.
Hi, thank you to Debbie and the press for hosting this candidate forum. I'm Allison Merriweather, and I was appointed to the school board in March from a field of 5 candidates, and therefore I'm running to retain my position on the school board this fall. My family has lived in the Issaquah community for over 25 years, and I have 2 daughters that currently attend Issaquah High School. Therefore, I've experienced the school district comprehensively from kindergarten through 12th grade firsthand as a parent. When my daughter started kindergarten at Clark Elementary, I was shocked to discover that there was no art teacher in the building. Even I, all those years ago, growing up on an island in Maine, had had an art teacher in my building. Volunteering in the classroom, I experienced firsthand the lack of funding that our state provides our students. I became an advocate for public education and have been advocating for over a decade in many capacities to deliver resources to our schools to make sure that our students have the best education possible. I have extensive board experience and leadership experience across the district as a whole, governing bodies of organizations that have multi-million-dollar budgets. In the schools, I've served on my local PTA board every year since my kids have been in school. I also served as the council president, which oversees all 24 schools in the district. During that time as president, subsequently after being president of council, I also served as the advocacy rep for 3 years. I serve as the board chair for Volunteers for Issaquah Schools, which is the citizen advocacy group that runs the district bond and levy campaigns, which raises hundreds of millions of dollars locally for our students. I am also a trustee on the board of the Issaquah Schools Foundation. That organization is the private-public partnership that seeks to fill the gap between what is a basic education and the world-class education our community expects. Through all of these efforts, I have sought to build relationships with the community as a whole and to collectively problem solve, whether in my efforts to provide art enrichment or advocating in Olympia. I also discovered that it wasn't just about funding, it's about how we strategically invest those dollars for the best outcomes for our students. In 2009, I worked extensively with our legislators to help pass a major education reform bill, House Bill 2261, that laid out a comprehensive plan for strategically investing, in theory, in our students in education by 2018. Since that time, I've stayed actively engaged to make sure that our legislature fulfills that obligation to our students and to the future prosperity of our state. I truly believe that our success as a school district is wholly dependent upon an engaged community. Our teachers are on the front line every day, but they need the support of the parents and the community as a whole backing up their efforts. My sole motivation over all these years has to ensure that each and every child has access to an educational opportunity. I believe the best gift that we can give a student is the gift of an education, which ultimately serves the entire community as a whole.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you to the Issaquah Press and also to the Issaquah Cable TV Commission, and thank you all for coming tonight. As Debbie said, I'm Lisa Callan, and I'm running for the Issaquah School Board, the District 4 seat. I believe in civic duty and being an active part of one's community, and serving on the Issaquah School Board is where I see my personal skills, my desire, and my sense of civic obligation directing me. As an engineer and manager of the Boeing Company, I was part of teams developing engineering simulators for 2 major new commercial airplane programs. As a Boeing loaned executive to United Way, I have helped manage their diverse portfolio of health and human service programs. As a software consultant, I've pulled together teams from across the world to work on multi-year development programs. As a parent and a mom of an 8-year-old, I have worked through the PTSA to work new cultural and artistic and academic enrichment opportunities to the wonderful kids at Grand Ridge Elementary. As a member of the Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, I also support the Issaquah Schools Foundation and Community Network, and I'm connected to what's happening in our community. I was exposed to the process of education and the challenges of running a school district pretty early. You see, I was actually raised in a household of public educators and administrators. My grandmother was a teacher on the Apache Indian Reservation in Arizona for over 20 years. My father was a school district superintendent, and my mother has worked at the university level. This upbringing, along with all my experience, has motivated me and prepared me to seek this position on the Issaquah School Board. We are very fortunate to live in a community which has supported our public schools. We have a great district, but there's still much work to do. I would like to see increased guidance and support opportunities for our kids. We want them safe, we want them equipped to make healthy choices, and we want them to know that they matter. I'd like to see more early opportunities to catch kids at risk sooner. This includes pre-K access for everyone, pre-K assessments in speech and developmental milestones so intervention support can happen sooner. I'd like to see stronger, more diverse vocational and technical training opportunities. We need certificated training options and alternatives to the comprehensive high school format. We need ways to reach all of our kids. We need to pay attention to the front line in education, the point of action. Teachers know when they're reaching the kids. They know what kind of support and training they need, and I believe if we create an environment for our teachers to reach their fullest potential, our kids will reach theirs. I would like to see the Issaquah School District increase graduation requirements, strengthening science and fine or applied arts, along with the support to get every child there. This will prepare every graduate for a livable wage job, a skilled career, or college. I'd love to see a future where every child touched by Issaquah School District knows they matter.
Thank you. We will go directly into our questions, and we will start with you, Lisa. As a school board member, your focus will be primarily on policy setting. What is one policy you personally want to work on revising or adding?
The policy definitely around reaching all of our kids and what it means to what is our success rate around reaching those kids. I think that adding a vocational element that's stronger, that provides stronger STEM, science, technology, and math certification options for children that the traditional comprehensive high schools don't fit. I think it's imperative, and I think we're weak in our district in this area, and I would like to see policy that goes around strengthening how we reach out to get all of those kids.
Okay, Allison?
I believe an area of opportunity for our district is the social emotional health of our students. That's an area of high concern for me. And as many of you are aware, we had some very tragic events that happened in our district last year, highlighting the needs for additional supports for our students. I believe that the district is taking some proactive action this year in terms of providing additional mental health support within the buildings. And that is coming online through a community partnership with the local hospital to provide those resources. I also believe that we need to engage the community as a whole in this. It's not just the school districts that can address this problem. I've proposed on the board a board committee, a subcommittee to put forward, working with the community as a whole, looking to reach out to different community members from the city, from the Friends of Youth organization, the Issaquah Drug-Free Coalition. Based on the data that came out of our Healthy Youth Survey, we have lots of areas of opportunity to work out and reach these children to give them the supports they need to be successful.
Okay, thank you. Allison, if you'll start this one. How are teacher evaluations currently done, and what can be changed to ensure that we have the best teachers on our staffs?
Well, I actually helped advocate in Olympia for a new evaluation process for our teachers. It was called the TPEP, Teacher Principal Evaluation pilot. Our district actually adopted that early as a pilot. We were going through the pilot stage and moving forward through the new evaluation system this year. It's no longer going to be a two-system, satisfactory or unsatisfactory. There's multiple measures and different categories for the teachers. But the transition to this new measurement is complex, and it's very time-consuming on the staff as well as the teachers for the evidence that they need to show. I think ultimately it will help give the teachers the constructive feedback that they need to help improve their craft and develop and grow their skills as a teacher, which is ultimately what we want. We know the greatest impact to our students is based on the teacher in front of them, and we always need to be continually investing in our teachers to provide them with the tools necessary to grow their craft.
The teacher-principal evaluation process that Allison has mentioned is what is happening here in the district, and it is true that it's taking a huge amount of both building administrator time and teacher time to go through the process. It's a multi-phase, multi-step, multi-interview, multi-artifact process. So I think as this is getting rolled out, I think it's very important to make sure that we have the training that's necessary for both the administrators and for the teachers to go through the process. I think it's very important that there's feedback mechanisms in place, because this is new, to see if the intent of what the evaluation process is really, if it's really being met. I think that it's important to do best practices and to calibrate so that one building's teaching, scoring, evaluation process is not necessarily lining up with another building's, or if you have two different people within a given building providing that evaluation, that there's issues around that. So I think the implementation and making sure that we have that voice across coming back to us is critical.
Okay. Lisa, let's stick with you. I want to kind of follow up on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a place for merit pay? We often hear discussions in Olympia about adding merit pay, and if so, how do we get there?
Merit pay. Well, I think that the teachers have been asked, because of the budget cuts and the cutbacks, and they haven't received a COLA in 6 years. They've been asked to do a lot more work just to get an increase in pay and salary. And from my perspective, even in industry, if you look at the industry areas where you've had merit pay and you've had performance pay for performance actions, you're seeing that in an industry today where that's not really working out the way I think people had hoped to. What I'd like to see is teachers actually get a COLA in our education system, get funded fully, and then from that perspective, once we get a baseline where we're not working from the scraps of the pennies that we have, then we can establish whether or not there'd be a reason for merit that's above and beyond that.
Go ahead.
I believe the issue of merit pay is quite complex, and there have been some studies where they actually tried putting merit pay in place for teachers, and it did not change or improve the outcomes. I don't believe that that's why teachers go into teaching ultimately, is driven by a merit system. But I also believe that we need to pay our teachers adequately and well for the services that they do provide. The state of Washington went through the teacher compensation evaluation process as part of the process with House Bill 2261 and looking at it. So it's not so much how much we're paying our teachers, but how we pay our teachers. It's a very convoluted system where we have the state funding and then also the local funding that is addressed by the tri-pay, which Issaquah is already at a disadvantage at the state level because we receive less funds than the state, other areas in the state do. But also then so much of it is negotiated locally, and that is dependent upon the revenue that each area can provide. I think we need to provide much more stable funding to our districts so that we can have equity across the state for all of our teachers and that they can count on that salary.
Okay. Let's move back to policy for a minute. Allison, last year the board took back the power from the superintendent to decide the future of Liberty High School's schedule. Considering that the board has a policy governance model, was it right to take back this specific power? And if elected, would you do something similar again?
I was not on the board when they made that decision, and that's the interesting part of policy governance, that all of the authorizations are enumerated specifically to the superintendent unless the board chooses to retain them under their control, and at which at any time they can change whose authority that falls under, whether it's the superintendent or the boards. And in that case, my perception as a community member at the time was that the board felt because this was a community-wide district issue that impacted all of the students across the district, even though it was technically addressing just Liberty. In this case, we'd also reviewed it as a comprehensive high school schedule conversation, and looking at that the board felt because the community was so involved and so engaged with it, and they are the link to the community, that they needed to represent the voice of the community as a whole.
Lisa?
I think that the board and policy governance is purposeful and intentful, and we can do a lot of work within policy to guide and direct the district. And I think that we need to pay attention and full audit if there's a decision to be made to go outside of those balancing guidelines. I think one of the reasons why you would go out is because of a large community voice or a change in community value, and the board's role as elected officials is to represent the community's values and bring that forward. So there has to be a way that there's collaboration with the community, with teachers, with parents, with children, the kids themselves, to come to the table and be able to have a voice that's heard. And I think in this case, that's how the board felt was the right approach to do.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to vary often from policy governance, because I think there's a lot of good stuff in place there that we want to hold to.
Lisa, the school board members spend a lot of time lobbying in Olympia. Other than funding, what other issues will you be bringing to legislators this session?
I think the primary focus from my perspective is paying attention to what's happened to unfunded mandates. Unfunded mandates play a huge role in what happens within the district. So even though it's not all about funding, fully funding basic education, when you have something like Common Core that's been adopted, there's costs associated with implementing Common Core, and if there's no money that comes with that, that's a huge impact on district resources. It's a huge impact on classroom time, actual teaching time. So the mandates that come down from the legislature, I think it's critical that there's something that gets put into place where there's a review either by the OPSI or the Legislative Assembly itself to understand what the impact is going to be to the district before they implement the mandate.
Okay.
Debbie, could you specifically repeat that question again, just to
Sure.
clarify for me?
School board members spend a lot of time lobbying in Olympia. Other than funding issues, what issues will you be bringing to legislators this session?
I agree that we continually have the conversation with the legislators of the impact of their mandates to us at the district level and what that looks like. I believe our WASDA directors have a list of hundreds of unfunded mandates from the state. What we need to evaluate is which ones of those are draining classroom dollars and have very little impact. So I think we need to start with that. However, also, we need to be working with our legislature, again, looking at, they're continually changing the standards for our students, and we are moving to Common Core standards. We are also in the process, the state will be adopting the next generation state standards, so they need to hear from us in terms of what that looks like in the ground, in the buildings, because every time the state adopts new standards, which we're in favor of, they do that without the funding to purchase the curriculum or align the curriculum to it, and that process is a very lengthy, time-consuming process, and we have to invest a lot of money at the local level to implement that.
Okay. Allison, what students, or did you answer that one? No, I've
Yeah.
lost
I
track.
answered that one first, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Allison, what students in general does Tiger Mountain High School now serve, and how will that be different when the school is rebuilt?
Tiger Mountain High School, for those of you that are not familiar with it, is our alternative comprehensive high school that's open to all students in the district. It also houses our ACT students, which are our transitional students that we serve from age 21. So there are multiple groups within that campus. The district, however, is looking at, with the rebuild and the expansion of Tiger Mountain, looking to expand opportunities for all of our students, not just the students that are attending Tiger Mountain High School. We're looking to perhaps expand the options where we could have an extended day, so students could come from the other comprehensive high schools to take other classes after traditional school hours. Particularly looking at a vocational focus and looking at providing educational opportunities partnered with the business community, particularly internships with Swedish and other industries that provide technical skills that are needed from our students. So that's a great area of opportunity for expansion with opportunities to electives for our students district-wide.
Okay. Lisa?
Can you repeat?
Sure.
Please.
Currently, what students is Tiger Mountain High School serving, and how will that be different when the school is rebuilt?
The population that's being that attends Tiger Mountain Alternative is as Allison has stated. So I think how it looks different, or how I hope to see it to be different, is to certainly continue to serve the population that's being that's attending Tiger Mountain now with the needs that they have, as well as providing transitional resources. I think the thing that I would like to see added to that is this balance, or this new model of maybe a blend of part-time comprehensive high school, part-time vocational, or online support, as well as vocational support, so that we can get every child that wants to working towards a livable wage job when they graduate, if they're not college bound and they have that choice and they have that opportunity. Or say that they want to go to the Olympics and they're performing full-time and they're in the sports and they don't have the capacity to go to school at the comprehensive. This is another avenue to do that. So I think we broaden that audience base is key.
Okay. At this time, we're going to switch to some questions that have been submitted to us from our readers or from our audience here. Lisa, you begin. What considerations did you take into account as you chose either the mini or the full campaign on the PDC filing? Is your level of diligence in understanding your PDC obligation indicative of how you would oversee the school district?
So I chose to do a full campaign because I'm into transparency and full disclosure. As some of you might have read in the Issaquah Press article, I did find out that I was not following to the fullest extent by filing on time on some of my C4 forms, and that was a mistake on my part. I misunderstood the filing requirements, and as soon as I found that out, we quickly worked to correct that problem and wanted to get it fixed. So that's the joy of one being, fully disclosing, is that the errors are seen, but the other thing is that they can be fixed and they can be reported, and everybody knows what's happening, and everybody's in the full disclosed, transparent mode there, which I think is important from a public official perspective. In terms of what my position would be in a school director, fortunately, the school is being run by professionals who know much about how to interpret the PDC laws, and not by volunteer moms that are trying to interpret them and be first-time campaigners.
Thank you. Allison?
When I chose to run for school board, I actually did my due diligence and actually read all of the differences between a mini reporting and a full reporting. But I also went back and looked at what had been done in the district previously and how much funds our previous candidates had run their campaigns on, so that I could make an informed decision as to whether to file for the mini, limiting myself to $5,000 in expenditures, or the full reporting. I chose the mini because previously nobody has raised more than $5,000 for their campaign, with the exception of right after the strike when Jen Wolseth raised almost $9,000, and that was over 10 years ago, and that was previous to the current limits on campaign financing for school board candidates. So I felt that the $5,000 and the limit would be more than adequate to run my campaign. I have maxed that out, and I have turned away money, but I also knew within that parameter I had a time frame where I could convert my filing to the full reporting, should I choose to. Had I had full information at the time, I could have chosen otherwise, but there was not full disclosure, so I made my decision based on the information that I had at the time.
Okay. Allison, another one that was submitted. Currently, the district has no district-wide policy regarding what foods can be brought to school from home for lunches and snacks. Instead, this issue is left to each school to sort out. Do you think there should be multiple allergy policies, one for each school, or one district-wide policy? Why?
Dealing with the issue of what parents pack in their children's lunch and controlling that would be quite convoluted. However, I also believe that students need to have a safe learning environment. I know that in the buildings they have a peanut-free table where the students that have that allergy also need to be. But having a student that's in that space, they're still always at risk because we have so many times where parents are providing snacks, they're sitting in conjunction with other students. So I'm not sure that a district-wide policy at any level would be able to circumvent what actually really happens in the building on a day-to-day basis with what the students and the parents pack. It's too complex to control. We also just passed legislation that will allow for EpiPens to be available in the buildings, which will help circumvent some of that issue because those can be administered by anybody in the building now going forward. And it is also my understanding that if somebody's truly not having a reaction, you can still administer it and it would not harm them. So we have precautions in place going forward to protect those students should an emergency on the rare occasion occur in a building.
Okay. And Lisa?
Repeat the question for me, please.
Sure. About allergies in schools and what the rules are for, got it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that it is very difficult to do at a district level. I think that it's, the parents have a right and a choice to try to figure out how to feed their children, and I think children with allergies and the parents with those are working to figure out what the safest protocol is for them to do that. In terms of having allergy awareness and parent education around that, there's a lot that can be done from a district perspective on having just education around that, which I think would be helpful. With regards to having the new EpiPen placement in the schools, that type of thing, I'm very aware of what's happening there. There are no WACs written yet on how that's actually going to be implemented here in our school district. So we're still waiting to see if actually each school will have an access to EpiPens and whether or not that will actually be used as a protocol that we can call out to be even across the schools.
Okay. Lisa, do you think a member of the public, perhaps somebody designated by the school board, ought to be present in contract negotiations between the district and teachers?
You know, when I was interviewing for the interim seat, I did state that would be the case. I thought that would be good to have somebody from the community there. After having further dialogue and discussion with both teachers union administrators and community members at large, I've since changed my point of view on that. I think it appears to me that on the contract negotiations and on the table that the union and the building administrators and negotiation team need to have a safe space to be able to talk freely about options of how they want to do that. And I don't know that they would do that in front of the community openly. I do think it's the board's position, though, that once the negotiation discussions are brought to the board, that the board makes sure that there has been full access and full involvement by all parties.
Okay. So many here. Well, I'm sorry, you didn't answer yet. Go ahead, please.
You want to repeat that? It's in terms of the school board a community member participating.
Right, on contract
negotiations. I'm neutral on that at this point in time. Our district has not, since we've adopted policy governance, our school board has never participated actively at the bargaining table with the two bargaining teams. However, the board does have a role of responsibility to be in conversation with the district and being updated through that process to continually provide feedback to the district as they negotiate what the values and community wants out of that contract negotiation. But to have the school board directly at the table, that has not been the case in the past. I know in other districts, certainly around the state, they do have school board members or community members participating. But I'm not sure exactly what the impact of that would be or if that would change the outcome per se of the negotiations. So I would need a lot more information and data as to the benefits or the cons to having that scenario take place.
Okay. Allison, could you speak to the benefit of this new core curriculum in the schools and the impact on the teachers?
The Common Core standards we're one of 46 states that have chosen to adopt these national standards. And what that does is that provides consistency for students that move across the states and across the nation as to what they're learning in certain content areas. It's in English language arts and math. It's not comprehensive. Then we also are looking to adopt the next generation science standards. So they don't apply to all curriculum. However, with these new standards, the theory is that, instead of going a mile wide and an inch deep, you're going into much deeper depth in the content area. So our teachers really need to be adequately trained in a lot of professional development and adequate time to make sure that they are well versed in the standards, as our district's actually currently implementing them. And so we need to make sure that they are well versed so that they have the skills to then translate that to the students, because the students are ultimately going to be held accountable with these new smarter balance tests that everyone will be taking statewide in replacement of what was the WASL, then the HISP, and now the smarter balance test as we've moved through that. So it's very critical that we invest in our teachers to make sure that they've had adequate training and professional development in the key areas across all sections prior to the rollout and ongoing as we go through it, because as we go through these, there will be changes and there will be bumps along the road, but we need to be supportive and tolerant as we go through a very different change in standards for our state.
Okay, Lisa?
It's very similar. I mean, there's not much more I can add to what Allison stated. That's exactly what's happening with Common Core. I think that I have training for our teachers is critical. I think understanding the assessment piece that is around that is critical. I think that having a huge community dialogue about when this stuff is implemented, how that's going to impact test scores for students, and if we see a drop in test scores, why, and there's an understanding and an awareness around why that's happening, so that it's not a, did our kids get dumber? Did our teachers, are they not teaching the kids what they're supposed to be teaching? All of that kind of stuff, because it's a huge change in curriculum and in rigor, and a different type of rigor that we need to be very very public and transparent about with the community.
Okay, thanks. We're running a little late, but I want to get one more question in here before we go to the last ones. So Lisa, you'll start. Did you support the charter school initiative last year? If so, how would it be good for Issaquah? And if a proposal came forward, where would we put it?
I did not support the charter school initiative. If a proposal came forward with Issaquah, it would be hard. I would be hard at this current time to argue that we have a need for a charter school here in Issaquah. We don't have any failing schools. We have a low achievement gap as compared to the rest of the state. I think there's a lot of things that we can do within our public school system to reach the achievement gap, kids that are falling through the cracks and those types of programs. And I would rather not take money away from an already struggling financial pool of public funds to build a school separate and then divide and conquer, like say if we're building something for an achievement gap group where you're actually pulling them off to a separate school and then you're also isolating them from a socioeconomic point of view. So in Issaquah, I don't see a place for it.
Okay, Allison?
The way the charter initiative was written was it was designed to address current failing schools in our state that have been chronically underperforming for certain students. It is addressed specifically for struggling students. So from that standpoint, Issaquah would not qualify for charter schools. But I did support the initiative because I would never deny a parent that is in a school the opportunity to change schools and have access to a better school for their child, and tell them that their only option was a public school that was chronically failing and underperforming. Parents overwhelmingly, and students and teachers overwhelmingly, want choice and options in the public format for our students. I believe that it's very important that our students and our parents have options to meet their individual students' needs. One size does not fit all. So as this was written, no, it would not come to Issaquah. Our school board has not applied, nor has our district, to be charter authorizers. It's limited to 8 per year. So it affects very few areas in the state, and we do not qualify. However, with that being said, I wholeheartedly support options for parents.
Okay, good. Let's move to our last question, and that'll be from you to your opponents. And so why don't we start with Lisa? Got a question for Allison?
Yes, Allison, I wanted to talk to you. There's been a flurry of education reforms that are being presented to the state legislature, some of which I am in favor for, some of which I am not in favor for. What reforms that have not already been passed do you feel are necessary outside of fully funding basic education, of course? Like, for example, failing third graders who don't read at grade level, giving school districts A through F grades, that type of thing.
I believe that we need to have reforms that increase accountability. We are asking the state to provide additional resources to our students. With House Bill 2261, we are looking at an additional $4 billion needed to be invested in our students. And for the community to buy in for that amount of money, they need to know that there's a level of accountability and that we are measuring the outcomes for our students. So from that standpoint, when we want to make sure that the dollars are being wisely invested and that we're getting results, I support that investment and that accountability back to the public, because it's the only way we're going to get the community to support our schools and invest at the higher level that we so desperately need.
Okay. Allison, question for Lisa.
Lisa, should you be elected to the school board, what will be your greatest challenge to meet the expectations of the position?
The greatest challenge, I think, certainly getting up to speed. It's a huge and it's very complex, and it's a tough role to do, and I know that from my experience base and reaching out right now, here and now, with the people that are involved in the administration, but also knowing that in terms of being raised in a family with a father who is a superintendent, there are no real easy answers, because if there were, there wouldn't be issues on the table today. So understanding the complexities, understanding and putting thoughtful perspective on it, and making sure that there's a collaborative viewpoint, and I'm hearing from all sides before I make my voice and my point of view heard. I think that's key. You want to make sure that you've got all the data and all the context for the data before moving forward and making a decision. Thank you.
Let's go to some closing remarks, and Allison, you're up first.
I'm first? Okay. Again, thank you for hosting this candidate forum. Issaquah is a high-performing district, and I look forward to building on that strong foundation. Serving on the board, my focus is ensuring that the district's priorities are student-centered, community-based, and fiscally responsible. Within that, my academic priorities are that the standards are relevant and rigorous, and that we have engaging, high-quality instruction supporting our teachers. I'd like to see expansion of options beyond the core subjects for our students. And my focus is also STEAM. I know we talk about STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, math, but for me, we need the A. The arts are core, and I believe that's critical to keeping our students in school. I also am very concerned about the social and emotional health of our students. They need a safe learning environment, not just physically safe, but emotionally safe, with the mental health supports available to them that they need to be successful. I also am looking at community engagement. I have built strong relationships within the community over the years, and I look forward to continuing those relationships. Strong schools make strong communities, and strong communities make strong schools. I've demonstrated my long-standing commitment to our students, and I ask for your vote so that I may continue my efforts.
Okay. Go ahead, Lisa.
And thank you again for everybody for turning out. I want to emphasize that I have the skills and the context for this role, and as a mother of a third grader, I want my child to grow into someone who is passionate, unique, strong in mind and spirit, and prepared for the path he chooses. And as a community member, I want that for all of our children in this community. As your school board director, I would strive for schools where every child matters, every child graduates ready to pursue his interests and life goals. I understand the skills needed in the current job market. I have a technical business background with experience in collaboration and reaching consensus from vested parties. I am the only candidate, sitting director, that would have an elementary age child. I have an understanding of issues arising from high growth areas and how that impacts the schools. In my PTSA leadership roles, I have helped create programs in art and parent engagement and teacher support and cultural diversity that actually won a State Taking Significant Action award. I'll work with parents and teachers in the community to ensure students come first. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd really like to thank you for being candidates, being willing to serve our school districts, our taxpayers, our students. It's just a really tough job with really high expectations, and good luck to both of you. I'd also like to thank Tim Smith from the City of Issaquah, who's been doing our recording tonight, and this will be replayed a couple times a day through Election Day on City Channel 21, and I believe it will be streamed on the city's website. So tell your friends to tune in and get to become as educated voters as you are. Thank you, audience, for coming. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Debbie, very much for hosting this. I appreciate it.